This week in post, a photo teardown of a sunset on the rocks. Hi everyone, I'm Scott Davenport. Welcome to In Post. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to do a photo teardown. I'm going to walk through the major processing steps that I used to create this photo here of a sunset along the rocks in San Diego. And I shared footage from this shoot with you earlier in the week in the field. If you haven't checked out that video, have a look at it. It's pretty cool. And let's get into the main changes here. So I've got a handful of snapshots to help us walk through. This is the final image, and this is where things began. So certainly it was a cooler tone to the whole scene, and I think the photo overall, it's not necessarily underexposed, but it just felt a little bit dark, so I wanted to shift things, opening up a little bit. And as you'll see in a moment here, I played around with the crop just a little bit because this side of the frame felt a little heavy, a little empty. So we moved in with the crop rotation, slight tug in on that, and we'll see later on I revisit that because looking at it now and knowing what I did, I still feel like that side of things is a bit too empty, but we'll get there. So next was the basics. So added the basics, we're going to see the scene is more opened up, the exposure is brought up. There is more warmth in the scene. You can see the warmth has gone significantly higher. And just, standard basic adjustments. I actually began with the auto button and then fine-tuned things from there. Really just looking again to open up the exposure so I could see more of the details that were there. Next up is the sky. So I wanted to bring the sky back into to accentuate the different color bands that were in there. And so we'll get that snapshot loaded on there. And I actually have a sequence of several different graduated filters. And they're all kind of right on top of one another. I'm going to move this one out of the way for just a second so you can see that there's another one back there and even a third one back there. Let's go through each one. So this bottom one here, this is real traditional, just lowering the exposure about 30, or 0.3 rather. The next two were variations on a theme, working with temperature, cooling down shadows, warming up highlights. So notice for this second pin, I've lowered the temperature a little bit, but using a range mask to not affect the highlights. So really just doing like the lower 2/3 of those tones. So as I hover over that, you notice the pockets that are brightest are not affected, right? Up in here, there is no change in temperature. And then the third pin is kind of the opposite, right? We're doing an increase in warmth and limiting that just to the very highlight areas. So I'm going to do a few, actually I'll just go back to my snapshot here. There we go, and turn off the mask. So what we end up with is we're cooling down the darker areas and adding a little warmth to these highlights, these areas under the clouds that we're catching the evening sun. So before that change, after that change. Great. Then moving on to dealing with this segment of the ocean. So I mentioned earlier, it still felt a little heavy as far as there not being a lot over there and kind of drawing the eye away from really the action of the scene. But also this just felt dark to me. So if I hit on ocean right here, we're going to see that area brighten up. Brightened up in a variety of places. This was the main focus of this, I should say. So let me do that again just so we can take a good look. This is before. This is after. So I've got some more warmth going on in here. But also, so that warmth is coming from this particular pin right here. I'll hover there for a second. You can see it's hitting the rocks, adding warmth and clarity. But what I was really after is toning this ocean more properly. So I'm going to hover on that pin. You can see I've used a range mask again over here to limit the effect to just the darker tones, which is the ocean area, and increasing the exposure and just subtly making that cooler. So if I were to turn off that radial filter for just a moment, see how much darker that ocean is, and that was pulling my eyes away from where I wanted to have my viewers look, which is the rocks and the cool surf that's swirling around. So using a radial filter, taking advantage of the range mask so I wasn't affecting the sky. I didn't have to do any particularly fancy brushing, and then just nudging that exposure up. Moving on, tightened up the crop. So we got in tighter a little bit more, and that kind of dealt with even this bit of dead space that I had over there. Really leveraging the shape of this rock, bringing it in from a corner, and balancing it on both sides there. So the goal of this crop really was to limit how much of this empty right edge there was. Now at this stage, I kind of was looking at the color and am I happy with the warmth or not. So it felt a little bit too artificially orange to me. So toned it down just ever so slightly. And that felt more natural. The previous settings, it felt overcooked. So pulled back on that warmth. And that was really just revisiting the white balance in the basic panel. There was a global change. This was nothing with masking, just revisiting that overall white balance. And then finally adding a very subtle vignette. And that was it. That was very, very subtle. So, all added up. If I hit the backslash key, this is what we began with. And this is what we finished with. For tip of the week, it's keep your subject in mind when you're processing. For this scene here, that really helped me deciding what to do with this right-hand edge. My subject is really this surf pulling over the rock here and this interesting secondary element here. This side of the scene, I need there to be ocean there. There needs to be something out there for context, but I didn't need it to be a different tone, either too dark or too light, pulling the eye away from this area. When I look at this scene, my eye catches the bright areas over here, and then I catch the dark areas here, which is great because that's where I want my eyes to be led. Of course, this is nice natural leading lines. This is not the area I want my viewer to focus on. So tightening in the crop, working on exposure, localized just that patch of ocean, all of those things were adding to me guiding the viewer's eye into the scene. And that'll do it for this week's In Post. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you did, please let me know somehow. Comments on the video below, social shares, always appreciated. If you've got a question about photography, feel free to leave it below, or you can send me a message through my website if you want to keep it private. And until next time, my name is Scott Davenport, and happy shooting.